Well, welcome to my studio. My name is Marlene Steele. I'm a Cincinnati professional artist. I'm a painter. I work in oil, watercolor, and pastel. I enjoy drawing. I love to draw. And drawing underpins almost everything I do. When I was about 10, I went to study with a woman in my neighborhood. It was a Saturday morning drawing class, and I was working with simple tools with other children. We always drew from life. Miss McCarthy was a former student in her early years of Frank Duveneck. Frank Duveneck is one of the most notable American artists in our region in the 19th and early 20th century. Many of the techniques and approaches to the mediums that I use are somewhat descended from the instruction that came through that lineage. I do urban landscapes, and I do portraiture and figurative work. And the figurative is both people at work and as well as action narratives. I am an artist who reflects my surroundings. And so when I first came to this building, I didn't pop right outside and draw everything, but eventually I began to see beautiful moments in the neighborhood. And so going outside and walking and having my cell phone with me or taking a sketchbook with me and making sketches was a way that I could capture the moment that inspired me. One thing that drawing does that is extremely important to the artist is it's self-editing. I edit out what does not say anything to me in that moment, and I try to capture what does speak to me. An artist does a different type of thinking in the sketch in preparation for painting because you're making notes. And it's not about finish, it's about capturing an inspiration. So I'm going to move on and talk about some of my urban paintings. The one directly behind me here is one of the early paintings that I did at the Cincinnati Museum Center. At the time, this was going on right over there in my neighborhood. So on a daily basis, I would go with my pastel box and go over to the museum and sit on the sidewalk and draw whatever occurred that day. I started out looking at it from afar, from over here, from the windows, and it didn't do much for me. So I had to be braver and take my box of pastels in a little lawn chair, and I would go over and pick a spot. So this is an early little sketch on this kind of ugly paper. I didn't really like it, but I was just using it as a background. And you see this beautiful, distinctive stone. I was fascinated with the idea of the abstract, and then the Art Deco building, which is one of my favorite architectural movements of all time. This is a little painting that I did from the same spot. So I'm not working very large, it's 12 by 16 or something. Some of the elements that I also enjoyed were the variety of cranes that they used on the face of the building. They cleaned the face of the building first, and they had cranes that would go all the way up to here. And people would be in those cranes at 8 o'clock in the morning. It was tremendous. When I did this sketch, it's a pastel drawing, I decided that it would be neat to do the painting there also. So this is partially painted on the site over there and finished in the studio. The original drawing does not have this idea about the orange drape. And the day that I went over to paint on that Sunday, though I saw this orange drape covering the exposed side of this promenade, was just like, ding! There's the idea. So I didn't start with that idea, but I went there because ideas evolve. And the whole series of my paintings at Union Terminal was recognized by the Ohio Arts Council and awarded the Individual Excellence for fiscal year 19. So in applying for that, I wrote an essay. I talked about the processes that I observed and how this was a personal experience for me to watch these workers and how this American icon was being preserved for future generations. And so I was very happy to be noticed with that. And so another interesting thing that is happening in the studio, in the immediate area of my studio, is the FC Cincinnati development. So sometimes I could just go over and I draw some of the structural compositions that I can capture. So this is a pastel that I started in June of this year, in the middle of June. I particularly liked what I saw that day because of the kind of the ship-like shape that and some of the transparency of the air and the structure, that it still felt very airy and structurally open, and that appealed to me. You see a variety of cranes. Again, I'm kind of intrigued by that, and the way they're beginning to build out the structure on the other side. So this pastel has been transferred to a canvas. The oil painting, it's not as exciting exactly as being there the first time, but it's very good. I think it's a very good skill to learn how to enlarge and expand a work and try to make it, doing it in another medium sometimes changes the image itself too. I've been asked to talk a little bit about my figurative work, which I do in all three mediums, oil, watercolor, and pastel. And I like to paint the figure and the portrait from life. So this is a typical sketchbook, and I just take it sometimes wherever I go. And of course, these people are moving. This is the real world. The sun is always moving. The wind is moving. And so as light changes, as people move, as people breathe and move and do things, it's really fun to learn to grasp and react, see it and respond. This young man from SCPA is a violin player, and he has a mask on underneath his hairdo. And here's a second drawing where I captured a little more of the action with so I have a little bit of red in the thing. I think this would make a painting. I like this series, but I like this drawing the best. So I try also, if I like the subject matter, not to stop with the first idea. I try to do a couple. And sometimes, the second or third one is better than the first. It just depends. I was at the market, Findlay Market, a couple of years ago, and outside the building I saw a musician in the cold. This young person was playing a plastic blue accordion. And I stood and watched him for a little while. The interesting thing that intrigued me was, while he was playing his ditties and everything, he was always watching his box where people were leaving him tips if they were inclined. But the other phenomenon was that he only had one hand. I watched for a while and I thought, well, I'll memorize this and go to the studio and paint it. And then I thought better of that and said, I really want to invite him to the studio to pose for me. And over a couple of sessions, we did the painting. Here's a person that I encounter in my social setting, in my common market where I buy my comestibles and I go on a weekly basis. And this is not unlike in the Taft collection, the painting by Frank Duveneck called The Cobbler's Apprentice. You have eyes on a person who has eyes on you. This person in The Cobbler's Apprentice is a working child in a street setting that is considering, you know, everything that he can understand about you while you are looking at him. And, you know, he has the grubby fingernails with a cigar in them. He has a very direct gaze. He's slightly ragtag. And the overall picture, the overall feeling that I get is a very direct experience of a real person. So I kind of view this painting as my response to that piece in the Taft collection. When I'm practicing drawing, I practice for gesture and speed. The gesture and the speed are very practical towards my courtroom work. Most of the time I'm asked to work in federal jurisdictions because the media is not allowed into those areas to record. You might remember the Nicholas Sandman v. Washington Post case. I was commissioned to cover this event for local news media, and you see Nicholas Sandman here and one of his counseling lawyers. And in the other drawing that I did, I'm showing the defense counsel for the Washington Post making his statement before the same magistrate. Now I'm working in pastel. I'm using pastel pencils. You don't bring a sharpener or a knife or anything into the courtroom. You have to have several of each color. You see the size of this fits exactly on my lap. No easel, nothing spectacular. I am interested in composing the important elements of the moment, and I'm using gesture to make them look natural and in some kind of movement in a setting that kind of indicates the courtroom. This set of drawings is part of a series that I did for the Dayton shooter accomplice. You never know when they're going to end the session because of they arrive at something in chambers and they decide to end the session. I'm drawing very quickly because when court is over, the bailiff will clear the room. And I have to be able to take everything that I've surrounded myself with or created and up and out. I do them in court. I leave, I go outside and the videographer is there. We videotape for the client that is already has an agreement with me, and I go home. I've enjoyed this little talk and your visit to my studio. I hope that I've opened up the horizon for you, because it's very important, if not to be an artist, to be part of the audience, to engage with artists, to consider art as part of your life, to visit art museums, and enjoy their collections, and take the time to look in your life.